All right, guys, how you doing? We have a special guest, the one and only, the legend, Mr. Warren Hayes. What's up, bud?
Hey, how you doing, Throwback? I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me on your show. We've been talking about it, so I'm glad it's happening.
Yeah, well, nowadays stuff has to happen during COVID, so
Yeah, it's on it's funny because on some fronts it's a lot easier, and on some fronts it's a little more complicated. It's like I don't know, but yet you know what? The important thing, Pat, is that we're here to talk about wrestling, and that's what's most important.
unfortunately it's not New Japan, but
Oh, that's fine.
so with SummerSlam be going into Boston, we are going to talk about SummerSlam and the match after the the major match which for SummerSlam that year in 2016 was the AJ Cena clash. We're going to basically talk about the second match and the third match and the whole thing because the first match, if you remember, Warren was trash because the Good Brothers basically gave Styles the win. So this was like
Yeah,
round two out of it.
it was essentially what we'd call a Bullet Club win if we're talking New Japan, right? Because the Good Brothers and AJ Styles were part of Bullet Club
Yeah,
in New Japan, right? And this was see one of the reasons why Bullet Club works so well in Japan is or at least as a heel faction, it's because it's all made up of non-Japanese wrestlers, or at least that's what it was when it started, who would use shenanigans to win matches. Because technically speaking, in New Japan, there's not that much reliance on, outside interference and sneakiness. Usually, when that kind of stuff happens, it's not very well received. It's so you can have some Japanese wrestling fans, a lot of purists who'd go like, "Oh no, no, this was a terrible outcome to the match because a chair shot was given or the ref bump or whatever." But Bullet Club really leaned into that and really did it a lot to piss people off, kind of thing.
yeah, and this match
So
was basically also this series of matches was with if you take that first one out, these two matches are just dream matches in general.
sure.
This is like one of those what if they crossed,
Hmm.
in '02, '06, '09, you know, AJ's T Impact era where it would have been in WWE, how those matches would have been. You know, we got pretty much two good classics out of
Sure.
this series, and then it's amazing to see where they are now.
It's a really good point that you make. Because sometimes we think about the dream matches and the dream matches we never got, or the dream matches we know we're never going to get because of how battle lines are drawn now within companies and so on and so forth. It's a really good point. We were lucky to get AJ Styles versus John Cena while both of them could still go. Maybe it's not like absolute tip top prime, let's say 2012, 2013 AJ Styles, maybe. But I mean, these were still absolutely outstanding matches with basically two of the greatest to ever lace a pair of boots, really.
Yeah, and it's also comes to the close where you had like the era with Hunter and Sting with that one run. Um, so many what if matches. The one that's like the holy grail that no one's gonna get is Sting and Taker.
That's the one everyone wants, right?
Yeah. So now they want Rock and Reigns, but that's gonna be hard with COVID. So, but I'll do the SummerSlam one, and you can do the third one, right?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So with SummerSlam, the whole place was ruckus. I think it was in Philadelphia that year.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably wrong, like usual.
No, no, no. You're right. I'll double check while you're talking. Go ahead.
So the crowd was ruckus. Obviously, these two people were polar opposites of each other. The the kind of like the OG club that they used to be called with. They had that whole thing beat up John Cena for a while. You know, you had Otunga on commentary. You had JBL, Moreau. Those trio were still on there. I mean, these series of matches are like to die for now. If you wanted to show
Sure.
the PC era kids what matches should be looking like, this should be one of the ones you should just start with.
By the way, it was in Brooklyn.
I should have remembered if I looked at the Barkley when I looked down.
We were both wrong. It's
Yeah.
okay.
But Styles was in his element. You know, he was white hot, lightning hot at that point. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this was the second match in the whole thing. Cena was being Cena. He was polarizing. You know, the Barkley crowd was very hostile. Very hostile.
Mm-hmm.
The match was amazing. It took, you know, everything up to newer heights. You know, besides the Reigns matches with AJ, this pretty much is what, if you had to sum up AJ's career in WWE, other than titles just match based, this would probably be the first one you would think of first.
Yeah, I have a tendency to agree. These are matches that really that defined AJ Styles as a top tier competitor, because uh, the his arrival in WWE at Royal Rumble got everyone excited, right? Still to this day, one of the loudest pops you're ever going to hear while watching a wrestling show. But everyone was worried about, oh well, you know, is Vince going to get him? Because if Vince doesn't get him, instantly he's going to be pushed down the card. And everyone who's ever seen AJ Styles work is like, no, this guy is top tier. He's S tier. He is a main event level talent. So everyone was kind of crossing their fingers that, you know, Vince was going to get it. Clearly, in retrospect, 2020, Vince got it. Vince really likes AJ, and I'm pretty sure that his matches with John Cena, who was already Vince's golden boy, I think this series of matches really helped cement what Styles meant to Vince McMahon moving forward.
And this is the match that started I am the face that runs the place. And now we have that going, and we'll talk about this in between, but there is a certain show that has a certain bro going after that tagline.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but commentary is basically talking about how important this match was with Cena. JBL actually stated he wasn't having a good year, which Cena actually at that year point was not doing too great. I think he was reeling after the Rock loss for a little bit. Again, I could be wrong.
Sure.
This match was one of those ones where it was defying for Cena at that point because he was chasing also after number 16 at some points.
Mm-hmm.
And then he threw the club sign right there because there was a club. I think Finn was around in a promo back then. They had like a meeting of the club or something like that. I don't know. But they locked up straight out the chute. Literally the freaking going back and forth, pushing each other, try to get dominance. Cena out the gate with this was basically what it leans into your match. Basically, it's probably the same thing as where it was counter after counter, like left and right. It was like two of the best people in the business in 2016, just basically playing chess where everybody else was playing checkers, as the saying goes.
Fair assessment, because that's exactly what was going on.
Yeah, AJ basically had a headlock as Cena was countering again. Otunga was talking about the last match, you know, and how it happened and ended. Cena got aside, headlock, drop kick by AJ. AJ started showboating, and that just gave Cena the opening to give a straight right hand, which was deadly. The thud in the spot that AJ took that coming off the buckle and turning around, hitting the right. It sounded like Tyson getting hit from a punch from Tyson. It was ridiculous. You know, other than that, you know, Cena launches, you know, throwing Styles pillar to post. Cena says it's time to get serious. These two guys in all these matches, all three of them were talking so much trash. It kind of this matchup for basketball purposes, since basketball's kind of in preseason right now, when we're filming this, is like Lakers and Celtics back in the 80s.
Sure.
Like you have a Boston born bred guy and you have a Southern top tier guy, it's just insane to see this. So, like I said, he threw Styles pillar to post. Cena saying "Get serious." The crowd was singing in harmony. Cena sucks, which made me laugh. It's like
Sure.
you don't hear that at all in Boston. Um, but Cena takes control. AJ hits a suplex on the edge of the apron. Styles was in control for the most part at certain points, but Cena launches Styles. That back body drop spot. Oh my God! If he launched him from like the beginning where the ropes are. The ropes, AJ bounced off of it, and he threw him across the other side of the ring, and his feet touched the other ropes. It was like pure power.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. Um, so what do you think at this point? How the momentum starts with this match is going?
Well, it's exact. I think you pointed it out, and that's actually the story of their next match as well, where Cena is all about the power moves. That's really all that it's about. So trying to establish dominance through some big uh, power moves, for lack of a better word, at this point, where he's able to stay in control of Styles, and Styles then having to adapt to this style here. But the thing here, and this is I feel like it's always been an undercurrent to all of the story between these two guys here, that AJ, despite being smaller, despite not being jacked up like Cena was, not besides not being not a body guy, not a power guy, despite all of that, AJ Styles knows how to take on dudes who are bigger than him because he's been doing that in his entire career. His entire career was based on, I'm smaller than everyone else. I will prove you wrong. I will prove that I can still hang with the big boys even though I'm not jacked out to here, kind of thing. Um,
AJ is exactly what Vince McMahon would call him, a pit bull.
is that it? Yeah, a pit bull. Is that what
Yeah,
Vince would call him?
yeah.
I've heard Vince.
There's some interviews where AJ said that Vince calls him his own personal pit bull, like that grind nose. Once you sinks your teeth into it, he doesn't want to let go, kind of thing.
So I mean, but this, like, that's the story of AJ Styles' career. Always being told you're too small, the Southern accent, all that stuff is going to work against you, and he's always swam against the current. So to me, this is really the consecration of everything he's worked for. John Cena, uh, a huge body guy. It was kind of like a final boss situation for AJ Styles.
Yeah, you cut out for a second. Sorry, but I got what you said.
Okay,
Um,
good.
Literally, we'll talk about a couple of things I'm thinking about after this match, but the AJ showing why he is one of the most pure strikers ever to lace boots. But Cena hits a drop kick. Showing why in 2016, just in WWE up to that point, he was the standard that everybody had to lift up. Snap suplex by Cena. AJ is in pain, a lot of pain. You know, for a match that went probably about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, this match should have been the main event that night.
Mm-hmm.
Cena was using his power, like you said, taking advantage. A lot of attempts for the AEA too, but Cena, I've never seen Cena use a headbutt, and in this match, he used it like once. Styles is now showing his big, like I said, basically came off the ropes and hit him with a forearm to the face. Five knuckle shuffle right afterwards with Cena. AA attempt by him. But Styles counters with the Pele kick, the good old Pele kick.
Mm-hmm.
But Styles hits the Styles Clash. I think at that point, nobody has kicked out of the Styles Clash at that point, that early in AJ's run. But Cena did it. He got kicked out at 2. So is there any recollection you could think of in that early start of AJ's career in WWE that someone kicked out of that.
I don't think so. No.
Do you think it's the closest thing that was protected other than Corbin's finish?
I think that early on for WWE, the phenomenal forearm was more protected than the Styles Clash. I would argue. I think that AJ went to the phenomenal forearm more often as a way to end people. But hey, there is no finisher more protected than the end of days in WWE. Pat, there's none. Absolutely no. There's no finisher more protected than that one. So it's a very bad example. The bar is here. Everyone else is here, kind of thing.
Pretty much. But at that point, the crowd was saying, "Holy shiznit!"
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god. Cena looked frustrating. Styles has him in the torture rack into a power bomb. Styles go for a pin attempt. Vintage Cena kicking out every time, not stopping. Styles attempted, but Cena got him on his shoulders and gave him a modified. It looked like he was going to go for the AA, but it gave him a modified cutter.
Yeah.
So I mean,
didn't they? Didn't Cena try to go with a springboard cutter for a while, or is it just me, or was it it seems to me like towards the end of his run in 2018, I'd say 2018, he started trying to add like a cutter or a springboard move, and I can't quite remember what it was.
I know Rikishi did a pump up cutter in his
Yeah,
early years, but that's completely different.
No, but not Rikishi. I'm really talking about John Cena, and really like 2 years ago, he had started adding this to his repertoire, and it looked awful. Like he couldn't properly land it, and then at some point it just disappeared. He stopped doing it. I think he did it 2 or 3 times. Seems to me it was like a springboard cutter. Was a springboard something? I know that much.
He did in this one like a modified cutter, like he put him on his shoulders and just pushed him up. But
kind of like
the angle, yeah,
an F5 cutter kind of thing. Yeah,
but the angle of it looked like it was a modified stunner.
Sure.
So just by the camera, Cena goes for a 2 count. These guys are going back and forth on these kickouts. It's just mind blowing. They're basically showing why both of them are actually the standard in this generation, and AJ still is that now measuring stick. Roll up by Styles, kick out again. Styles did the one thing I don't think anybody has done in Cena in a long time, and I don't think anybody did this, is hit the AA on Cena. And Styles did it, and it was like, holy crap. And JBL going crazy saying, Styles should be in heaven since all he loves to do is beat up John Cena.
Pretty much it.
What was your favorite promo with the beat up John Cena era?
Wow. That's a good question. That's a good one. I don't know if I can pick one out of the air right now. Because honestly, I'm drawing a blank.
They did one on Raw one night, either Raw or SmackDown, and they all three of them decimated Cena and literally destroyed him. And they did he did the phenomenal forearm, and they did the magic killer on him too. And then the backstage promo was like, guess what we like to do? And that tagline was born, beat up John Cena. And I think that ran for like the entire time up till the last one. Styles hits the 450 splash. They did like a little bit version of the Panama Sunrise in this a little bit, with Cena flipping over, hitting the mat and getting AJ, but it was not that clear because of the camera angle of it. But JBL says this is the match, like 2 old school boxers fighting at it. This kind of match, now looking back at it, reminded me of like, you ever familiar with Mickey Ward's work for boxing?
No.
You ever watch the movie The Fighter?
Uh,
Mark Wahlberg, Christian Bale's in it.
no,
Okay.
no.
Mickey Ward is an Irish boxer. That's from Lowell, where I'm from. And he had 3 matches with Arturo Gardi for the light heavyweight championship in the 90s, the late 90s.
Sure.
This match, it reminds me of, AJ being Ward and Cena being Gotti. I know it's just two different things, but these two guys had so many punches at each other. They had to do 3 matches. Gotti won the first one, Ward won the second one. Obviously, this match, we already know who won all 3, but they became very respectful for each other towards the end of it.
Sure.
So, I mean, this kind of reminded me of like one of those slug it out, take it, punch it, counter, all that stuff, like an old school boxing match. So, do you think if you had to use a sports reference, Warren, what would be the best one where you can just go like that, like an old school match or something like that?
Uh Sports ain't my thing, but if we want to go back to when I was a kid and I kind of watched it a little more, I'm gonna go maybe along the lines of the Quebec Nordiques versus the Montreal Canadiens kind of thing, because that was a rivalry that was deeply encrusted into my everyday life. You were on one side or the other, and whenever those two teams had a match, it would be intense and heavy, very very physical at the same time, because they just literally did not like each other. There's stories about players from the Canadians going into a bar and finding out that there's guys from the Nordiques there, and they just start fighting with each other because that's how clear the battle lines were drawn. So that's pretty much as close as I can come up with right here.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same way with all sports and wrestling in general too. Face buster by Styles, Cena kicks out. Styles is saying why. Both of them have frustration in their face. Springboard by Styles, but Cena gets him into the STF. This is an interesting set of series in this match. Styles reverses to a crossface. Cena uses his power. Styles gets him in the calf crusher, and he used an extra amount of torque on Cena's leg, and it looked like it was bending in non-perfect ways that a human's not supposed to bend. But Cena uses his power to reverse it back to the STF. These guys are using their submission styles and stuff like that. If you had to look back, would you ever consider Cena as a submission specialist? As we
Oh,
look back into it, like before he started using that.
God, no. What? Are you kidding me? His STF is one of the shittiest STFs that is ever applied in any circumstance ever. It really is, because he doesn't torque back on the neck. He sort of leans on his fists on the mat. That's what he does. He sort of it's like me coming up from behind to give someone I like a hug. And when you hug them like right across the shoulders like that, that's how it looks like. And he doesn't wrap the leg around properly. He just sort of like pops his calf over the other guy and over the other guy's leg, and that's it. I'm going to talk about it when we get into the SummerSlam match, but no, Jesus, John Cena submission art, no.
Well, they're going back and forth between submissions. Tornado DDT by Cena, pin attempt, kick out. This is just how it's gonna be. These two guys did not want to give up. This is just not for brand supremacy. This is not for personal pride. This is to see who is the very best. This is a war of attrition, basically. Cena hits that patented leg drop off the top on Styles, pin 2 count. Moreau talks about how both of these guys in the ring's IQ are, you gotta admit, Cena's IQ as an IQ for a ring general is just insane.
Oh, both guys, absolutely.
Yeah. Cena tries to get AJ up a couple of times for, one time trying to get the AA off the turnbuckle for the Avalanche, but AJ counters it into a Frankensteiner, and AJ gives a series of shots, and then the phenomenal forearm. And I think at that point, just like the Clash, nobody kicked out of it, but oh my freaking god, my
Yeah.
Lanta, Cena kicks out.
And the place went nuts. Especially like I said, I'm convinced that the forearm, that the phenomenal forearm was more protected as a finisher. Like I duly remember being like, okay, well this one's over, but not quite.
Yeah. Then the crowd's just going crazy at this point. Cena showing off his power by Styles hits him in the leg. Off the ropes, Styles turns inside out because he bounced off and clotheslined him. Cena finally hits the Avalanche AA, and Styles kicks out again. This is the dream match. This is a classic. This is Ali versus Tyson kind of retrospective on this. But Cena's disbelief. The commentary is talking about the guts these two have. Styles clash again, but there's no cover. Both of them roll away, and then the phenomenal forearm, and Styles wins. This is actually the standard that the PC should be using in general.
You mean like to as far as putting a match together?
Yeah.
Oh, everyone should be using this in WWE. I mean, that's not even a question. But you have to admit that the audience added a lot to this match. Like just how crazy the New York crowd was. It just added a whole other layer of storytelling, which I thought John Cena, being the pro that he is, never really leaning into a heel turn in and about itself, but did sort of acknowledge, throughout this match that I'm not the good guy here. I didn't know how much was adjusted on the fly, but this wasn't your typical, John Cena in distress kind of match. He didn't outright play the heel, but you could feel that he wasn't exactly the baby face in there. You know what I'm talking about.
I still think to this day, this series of matches are pretty much the best matches you could see ever in a series match. This beats, with these two guys, Cena almost out of the WWE a few years later, and AJ coming in. It's like two ships passing in the night. This is series of matches for this generation is better than the Rock Cena matches, even though there were two of them.
Yes, that I agree.
These three matches in a whole are a reason why people should pay attention to great talent. Or what if these things could have happened? So, but you have the third match.
Well, just before we go on, like if we're talking about like in WWE,
Yeah,
I absolutely agree. I would say the CM Punk Cena matches were special too. I think those were fantastic. If you really want to go a little long term, and it's not exactly like, but everything that Shawn Michaels and Undertaker did together, I think is extremely special. But if you want to pop out of the WWE bubble a little bit, it's hard to go wrong with Kazuchika Okada and Kenny Omega, which is a modern day epic in and about itself, and how on wrestling and wrestling storytelling, and how a story progresses with every match. Those are all series that are right up there as well, where it's like you can't just watch one match. You have to get the full. There's a full gamut here you have to run to really appreciate everything going on, kind of thing.
At that point for me, like I was working at a pizza shop, and we were literally glued to the network, because the only thing that would be running out in the parlor on Sundays would be Ring of Honor. And well, working at a pizza shop, you can't run it across the right next door to bring food over and stop and watch. So, but I mean, Punk, yeah, that series, especially when the crowd was in Chicago and
Hmm.
Boston right after each other. Hell, I'll even throw this out. The whole series for the women's side, you got Sasha and Charlotte going back and forth with the title, and
That was a
Hell
good
in,
one.
and
Hmm.
culminating in Boston. Speaking of which, of Boston, Hell in the Cell.
I
Uh,
agree.
but the next match for you is just that's a drill sergeant ring general's match, if it's the one I believe it is.
I love this match. I absolutely love this match. It's one of my favorite WWE matches, without any doubt. Anything to anything that you can conjure to say, can WWE put on a good match? Yes, they can put on a champion of a match right here. Honestly, one of the best the company has ever put on. Two top talents. We're talking about John Cena and AJ Styles, Royal Rumble 2017. And as much as the SummerSlam match was fantastic and is considered a classic, and I think Pat, if you go like star rating wise, if you go from a certain perspective of a certain wrestling connoisseur out there who gives star ratings to matches, I think the overall the SummerSlam one is considered to be the better one, right? I think, or at least the general consensus is. But for me, the Royal Rumble match in 2017 it's on another level, and the reason boils down to storytelling to me, because like you mentioned, like you talked about in your during your vision of this feud, not your vision, but your analysis of the SummerSlam part of the feud. Uh, they were they were in a series of matches. There was some long-term storytelling that was being told here, right? Um, and to me, there's nothing more satisfying as a wrestling fan to watch wrestlers fight each other uh, repeatedly. When I say repeatedly, on different occasions. That's what I'm trying to say. On different occasions, but the matches always feel different. They always feel a little fresher because, again, in the storytelling, you realize that these wrestlers have learned from their past mistakes, have learned from the past matches, and are trying to apply new ways to go about it to win the match to win this match in their series. And like you said, the first match they was had shenanigans. Had the not the Bullet Club, but the club involved, right? They had Gallows and Anderson involved, so
Yeah.
that was a bit of a wash. But then you get into this match, the SummerSlam match, and um and Cena and Styles have uh have their first straight up match, and you know maybe Cena's like, I'm gonna go all in with with the strength moves and so on. Styles kept mixing it up, right? That was the thing. He just kept mixing it up, uh, keeping Cena off his game here. This match here was all about John Cena doing everything in his power to put Styles away, but having a hell of a time trying to do it. Because he discovered here something about AJ Styles that he didn't realize in his previous matches, is that AJ Styles won't die.
It's
just
polar. It's mirror images of each other.
Well, to a certain extent, yes. Like Bizarro World in each case, right? It's like reversals. Anyway, look, this match here, it was in the Alamo Dome, so there were in Texas, so there were so many people in
Mm-hmm.
attendance. That was crazy, and you touched on it as well when you were talking about AJ Styles and Cena meeting for the first time and what it meant, and what it meant for the fans. You know, the reason why. there's a reason why Barclays was so hostile towards Cena. And it's because, New York fans, they're all smart fans. They all know what's going on, and they don't like John Cena because he's the golden boy and so on and so forth. So when you talk about polar opposites, it goes even into a sort of a meta level where John Cena is the casual fans guy, whereas John Cena, he's the smart fan. AJ Styles is the smart fans guy. So you really have smart wrestling fans who are rooting for Styles because they've known about his career. They know about the Ring of Honor stuff, the TNA Impact stuff, the Bullet Club stuff over in Japan. They know all of this, and they want him to succeed on the levels that he succeeded everywhere else.
It's the
That's what they
equivalent
want.
to, if you want to, like we were talking about sports earlier, Cena's from Boston. He's from West Newbury, Massachusetts. He's hung around Hampton Beach in New Hampshire. He's been all around this state, went to Springfield for college, hung around in Boston. And AJ, even though he's a South, he's from Georgia, Georgia bred pit bull,
Mm-hmm.
bulldog, Georgia Bulldog fan. It's like the Yankees and the Red Sox, and Cena's
There
the
you
Red
go.
Sox in New York, and you ain't gonna win if you're that.
Yeah,
It's
I
just,
get that. I get that sports reference though. I get
it,
the Yankees and the Red Sox. I get that one.
but at that point, the rivalry, the Sox and Yankees, have kind of died down.
No, I
So I
know.
mean,
But I
but
mean,
in
like if
just
you
in
were to tell,
general,
no, I
yeah,
know, I understand. Like I know it had died down. Kind of like the Celtics and the Lakers. It's not a feud anymore, but it used to be. I get these references, but if you
or
were to
better
talk,
yet, the Bruins and the Canadians too.
oh, the Bruins and the Canadians too, for sure. Oh, once the Nordiques were gone, the Canadians needed someone else to hate. Anywho,
But also, the last match was a major thing because I forgot to mention Cena left his armband in the center,
true.
which kind of is a reminder of Taker leaving his gear
Mhm.
also with Roman. So, Styles taking that armband and making it run. Jeez, these guys have to have a third one just to make sure who's the best.
Now, if we get into the match here, or at least in the setup, of course the crowd gives a very mixed reaction to John. Uh, but clearly AJ is the favorite here. But there's things about WWE that bug me sometimes on their commentary. There's just things where I'm like, my God, and it's stories that have popped up recently. I don't want to get into it because we're recording this, so I don't want this to be dated or whatever. But there's always discussions about WWE living within a bubble and not acknowledging what's happening on the outside, right? Commentary very, very early in the match, as Cena and AJ are in the ring, they say that this is the biggest match of AJ Styles' career. I think there's an argument to be made that maybe it is, but maybe also it ain't, because AJ Styles has fought for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship in the Tokyo Dome, and there's a depending on where you run as far as wrestling circles go, there's there's not as much prestige handed over towards any WWE title as opposed to the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, which is treated as and always has been treated as an esteemed a prize, an esteemed, coveted prize that only a select few are lucky enough to touch. So I get it. Like, I can understand, and especially in the microcosm of WWE, yes, it's AJ Styles' biggest match of his WWE career for sure. But overall, it's got to be up there. But I think we could have there'd be room for a debate around whether or not this is the biggest one of his career. And then commentary also says, here we have in the ring a dynasty from Massachusetts versus the new kid on the block from Atlanta. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, the new kid on the block.
You have to refer a boy band from Boston. Come on,
Yeah, on
man.
top of that, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, Styles has been wrestling since 1998, and he has won world championships everywhere he's gone.
He won
I
the
mean,
X Division Championship in Impact. Yes, I've watched Impact back in the day when it was on Spike TV.
well,
And he
there
won
was
the Impact Championship, the X Division Championship, the Tag Championship in Impact.
uh,
It's
And I mean, there's no reason to have not wanted to watch TNA back when it was on Spike at that era, because there was a lot of really good stuff.
Besides AJ, you had Samoa Joe in there. You had Angle in there. It was both of these
the Motor City
lineups.
Machine Guns. You had Frankie Kazarian. Look, it was Christopher Daniels. The place was stacked. Abyss. There was something for everyone. There was some really good stuff happening over there. Ring of Honor. He's been.
Punk.
Pardon me.
You had Punk years before.
Sure,
with
absolutely,
Ring of Honor.
absolutely.
Wasn't Seth in there at that point too? Before that, before
Seth,
the FCW
yeah,
stuff?
I think Shelby. No, Colby. What is it called? Colby. I forget what his shoot name is. Yeah, I think he might have done a couple of matches there. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, the amount of championships AJ has won compared to Cena, Cena got in from bodybuilding and went from FCW, from football in Springfield all the way to FCW, from doing bodybuilding, which is pretty much the standard, to cutting a rap album, winning multiple championships.
Sure.
Isn't that there's only one title that he has not won? And it's the same way with AJ now. With with one title he hasn't won, one major one. Well,
the Universal title.
AJ hasn't won the Universal title. Cena hasn't won the IC title.
Oh, okay.
Cena has won Money in the Bank. AJ hasn't. Cena's won Royal Rumble. AJ hasn't. But if you want to do the modern day Grand Slam, both of them have not won the NXT title.
Sure.
So that's up for debate for AJ down the line.
And there was I even remember that they wanted to send AJ Styles to NXT to start off with, and AJ Styles says, nah, so you put me on your big show, or we can just never mind, kind of thing. That was part of his conditions, as far as the legend goes, anyway.
But we'll get more in debate about which is the best show right now after all this crazy stuff in WWE as of late.
Sure. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, this is all to say that WWE commentary creates such a bubble that you don't think anything else exists out of there. But it doesn't make sense if you bring in someone who has a storied career and you say, oh, he's a legend, he's one of the biggest workers who's never worked in WWE, but then you start calling him a new kid on the block. It doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, I love how this match starts because it's slow, it's deliberate. You're like, okay, cool. We're going in for we're going in for the long haul here. This isn't going to be a 10-minute stinger. They're taking their time. They're setting stuff up. And again, Cena's in with the power moves. Cena's in with the power moves, but Styles always trying to counter, always trying to counter out of stuff with his agility, with that little extra speed that he has that our boy John doesn't necessarily have. At some point, Styles, he's there's a lot of this, a lot of counter moves. He counters a move, I don't remember what exactly, with a wheelbarrow face buster, which was awesome. And and just seeing John Cena bump that way is absolutely fantastic. So without saying they had a counter for all of each other's moves, which wasn't the case, but there were a lot of counters, a lot of stuff that John was setting up, such as early on, Styles flips out of an AA attempt. Like,
he did just the same thing in the Rumble match too. These guys were being.
This is the Rumble match.
Yeah.
You mean SummerSlam?
Yeah, SummerSlam. Sorry.
Okay. No,
they were doing the same thing, and they were very innovative. Like I said, the modified diamond cutter /
he did it here
stutter. Too. Yeah. These guys were. It's like mirror images of each other.
The thing. So as they're doing, these counter moves, but again, not countering every move, but there's a lot of counter moves happening. I'm going to tell you, seeing John Cena hit the 5-knuckle shuffle while much more complex moves and move sets are being countered out by AJ, I'm like, it kind of felt out of place. I'm kind of, I'm like, he'll flip out of an AA, but he won't roll away from the 5-knuckle shuffle. But I get it. It's sports entertainment at that point, so it's all right. I loved AJ Styles' Argentine backbreaker, or what? No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was AJ Styles who did an Argentine backbreaker powerbomb, which was really cool. Then there's this. We were talking about the STF earlier, right? And whether or not John is a Styles gets the calf crusher applied on Cena. Cena rolls around and reverses it into the STF. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. It just looks awful per usual. And then he applies it a second time, he being Cena, because Styles is reaching over to the ropes to break up the submission. So John reapplies it, but he reapplies it worse. And you can see it when I was telling you earlier, when he grabs the guy by the chin and he just drops his fists on the mat and just rests him there. That's exactly what he does here. And I'm like, there's no torque, there's nothing. But the amazing thing is that then Styles reverses out of the STF into his own STF. And by God, my friend, Pat, throwback, Jesus, does he torque back on John Cena's neck. He's like, son, this is an STF.
Yeah.
And he and the leg, because there's a leg component where you're supposed to like lock up the leg. There's no way Cena gets out of that. It was fantastic. I loved it. And the fact that they went so heavily into the ground game here showed me that it went two ways, right? Cena was trying to counter it, but Styles knows that John Cena isn't a great submission guy, because they spent more time on the ground game in this match than they did in their SummerSlam match. And I appreciated that, because to me, again, this is AJ Styles learning from his past, from his past match, saying, well, look, I can keep beating this guy. I just have to make sure that he doesn't have that he has to rely on a submission game, which he doesn't have. And I like that there was a good section of this match that had that happening. But I will give Cena props on this one here. He had some really cool reversals and some stuff where I'm like, damn, it's hard to make a case for him being awful when you see him do stuff like he was doing with Styles on the mat, and you're like, if he really wants to, he can really be good. Most of the time, I guess he's just protecting himself and half-assing it. That's a whole other story, but this was really, really good. Cena eats a Styles clash at some point, and he lands on his face. Like, he eats it on the nose. And I was like, did he know that he had to sort of scooch his neck back? He really ate it on the nose. Cena hit a sweet sunset bomb, which was really good. Styles with Inushi Goroshi. And this is the section where they're trying to pin each other, and they're always kicking out of stuff, because Cena kicked out of the Styles clash. AJ Styles kicked out of an attitude adjustment. Hell, he kicked out of a super attitude adjustment. And it took Cena it took Cena 2 extra attitude adjustments to do it on top of that one. So that's what I liked about this story, is that Cena had to double down on his power moves, because there was just no putting AJ Styles down.
No,
AJ Styles
this is a match that they were literally not even on the outside at all, right?
Didn't even step out of the ring once, which I really appreciate. You actually pointed that out to me when we started talking about doing this review. And I was like, yeah, they didn't. Everything stayed in the ring, and how cool is that? How cool is that?
And
No
you don't
dives, no
see that at all
pescados.
anymore either. You don't see
No,
anybody doing that.
no, yeah, it always has to go to the floor at least once. This was so good, and of course, John Cena won, and he won the WWE Championship off of Styles. But this is how you make someone look strong in defeat, Pat. This is exactly it, because it took attitude adjustments, super attitude adjustments, STFs, all sorts of power offense to get AJ Styles to finally not be able to continue, to just be like, my body can't take it anymore. Because Styles was eating everything and asking for more. So this was not a burial by any stretch of the imagination.
You can't
Au
bury AJ
contraire,
at all unless it's the Boneyard match.
oh yeah, which is a literal burial, right? Um, this was the consecration of AJ Styles as a top guy in WWE. Not just because he can fight John Cena and win, but he can fight John Cena to the point where John Cena is not sure that he's going to win the match and come out of it looking like $1,000,000 despite the fact that he lost, right? And this is something that WWE these days has so much trouble doing. And I don't know why. Because, of course, there always has to be a winner. There always has to be a loser. But just because you lose doesn't mean that you don't look strong in defeat, that you don't look weak in defeat. There are ways to make a wrestler look good despite losing a match. And one last thing about maybe about this match here, the crowd was so hot for this match. It was ridiculous.
It was the same way with all of them.
And they were eating it up. And the reason why I think, is because of how unpredictable everything was. Because you had because you had two guys in the ring that fighting, and the match could literally go either way. It was so difficult to say, here's my clear-cut winner. You couldn't. There were so many circumstances that could make the match go either way that you're like, this is exciting, this is good, because you don't know what's going to happen next. And this type of situation can only happen if you build strong, credible stars, right?
There's not many of them anymore.
And there's not many of those anymore. God bless Drew McIntyre and all the work he's been doing as WWE champion on Raw, but being fed Bobby Lashley, Dolph Ziggler as challengers, I'm like, cool, but there's no way, there's no real threat. I know Drew McIntyre's going to win this match. You know, you just know this. So the unpredictability that comes with having two strong, protected stars fighting each other is so crucial to a big match, to a big title match. You have to have that. Otherwise, you're just, like I said, it's good on Drew for what he's doing. The matches have been good. He hasn't had maybe outside the match with Big Show that aired on the Raw after WrestleMania. Maybe aside from that one, he hasn't had a stinker so far. All his matches have been good to great.
Well, he is the mayor of Clearmore Country, so.
So I mean, if he's an elected official,
Yeah.
there has to be some credibility there. But you know what I mean? If we get strong stars, real stars that are protected, you put them in a match situation, that's where it gets exciting. That's where the unpredictability gets in. That's when the audience becomes invested, and that's what makes us, quote unquote, buy pay-per-views.
This series of matches there's a saying that you don't hear that often, is that the loser is actually the winner.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the one case where you're protecting AJ, making him so over because of this. And in the third match, he had the title at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So there were higher stakes. Cena getting 16 and he didn't get it. But it made Cena still look like Cena because he put AJ over again and they
Mm-hmm.
made it both strong. So, you could still be the person who loses, but yet still win out in the long run.
Sure, absolutely.
So, but overall, these matches were insane. And these are the standards that the PC people should strive for. The closest thing I could think of would be the Roman series with AJ. There was an interview AJ did recently stating that the matches with Roman are the ones that, when he started first out, were what made him get to where he is now. So the question I have is that with the career at this point in 2016-17, and looking back in hindsight, would you ever picture AJ being where he is now with the matches he's had all the way up between 17 to 20 and seeing Cena getting 16 and then bolting out like The Rock has? Could
Mm-hmm.
you picture that if you were set, 2016, 2017 Warren version of yourself rather than, looking back in
Rather
hindsight?
than today. So
Yeah.
without the hindsight is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think at that point, at that point, you'd have to say to yourself, look, there's no way we're moving forward without John Cena getting the 16th championship. He's good, and you're like, he's going to be around here forever. Because honestly, whether depending on, no matter where you fell on which side of the fence you fell in regards to John Cena, I liked John Cena in the final years. I don't even know if you can call them final, but at least until he started his long-term hiatus, let's call it that. I liked everything that John Cena did in that period because suddenly it became less about him. He didn't care as much, and he just wanted to, you could tell he just wanted to help the business. And I really appreciated what he did. So to me back then, I'm like, yeah, I mean, John Cena's still around and he's hit number 16, maybe even 17 and 18. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, as far as Styles goes, at that point, AJ Styles, you're like, there's nothing that can stop this guy, right? Like, I'm convinced he decided to go to WWE because he wanted to prove to himself that he could do it. Because there was no reason for him to go to WWE.
It was one of those things off of his bucket list that he regretted not taking a longer chance at.
So there was no reason for him other than, can I do it? And my God, he did, and he's still doing. He's still one of the anchors of the show today, of the entire promotion.
He's still Vince's pit bull.
And there's no exactly, and there's no reason there, especially after these series of matches. You're like, man, Styles, there's no ceiling for Styles here in WWE. He can do whatever he wants, and honestly, he's been doing whatever he wants as well.
Yeah.
Except keeping his boys.
And I think the one thing that's going to happen eventually is when AJ's ready to go. The bro man, not Strowman, that Riddle's going to pick up the baton and run from that.
I think so.
Yeah. But that match at the Rumble is the closest thing at that point to what we had for the Fight Pit, where you just had just literally two mat technicians showing why they're good as what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And now with everything going on in COVID, we're getting those matches more and more and more. So Warren, tell them where they can find you.
Hey, youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes. I record my podcast live there every Thursday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern. So you can come around sometime. Sometimes even Throwback is there. If you want to talk to him and say, hey, you know what, that guy Warren you had on your show, Pat, he sucks. You can tell him there in my chat. That'd be fine. Or you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Warren Hayes and tell me outright that I suck. I'm okay with that.
Or you could just ask him and say, "What's cracking?"
What's crack? That's right. Seattle Kraken, baby.
Well, the funny thing is that while we're recording this, this will be SummerSlam week. It's very saddened because the last huge pay per view like this, and I'm not talking about the side one, out of the major four pay per views, the last one was in the 1997-1998 range, WrestleMania 14. That's going to be released with Sean soon. Now, harkening back to besides this, Warren, what was your favorite match if you've ever seen any of the WrestleMania 14 stuff with Tyson and Austin and stuff like that, and just to
Oh my
connect all
God.
that stuff?
Uh, Let me think back. WrestleMania 14, because the main event was pretty exciting. Mm, 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 mm. Wasn't there was a Triple H Owen Hart match there, right?
That was the match that literally was my favorite,
Yeah,
one
yeah.
of my favorites.
For the European title.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That would definitely that's the one that pops into my head because you had Kane versus Undertaker, and you
that
had
whole thing was stacked.
and you
So
had Terry Funk was on that card too.
yeah, they did the dumpster with Mick.
That was yeah, I remember. That was a wild one. But yeah, definitely Triple H and Owen Hart. That was a good one.
Well, everybody check that one out too. Go see Warren. Like I said, every time, go to Warren's page, hit him up, say what's cracking. Go to Fightful.com. Warren does a really good job on the Monday Night Wars. So how does it feel to have a British man, a Canadian man, and a sour grap all in the same show? Just go watch
Well,
and find out.
every Wednesdays though, not Mondays. We don't do Mondays. We do
Yeah,
Wednesdays. Thank God, because
Wednesdays.
Alex would be in a much more foul mood if we were doing this on Mondays.
Well, I mean, you guys do a good job, and with Louis being there, it makes it a little more interesting considering the fact that you guys could go against him internationally.
Could gang up on him.
Yeah, like I say every time, guys, you know, be kind, do a good deed, pay it forward. Me and Warren got nothing but love for you guys. Hit the bell, subscribe, enjoy SummerSlam week, and we're out, guys. Peace.